We have got to shift our mindset to this is the biggest thing your body is ever going to go through in your entire life. You're literally creating new life, pushing it through a hole that grows within a matter of hours. It's insane if you really think about it.
Welcome to the Core Connections podcast. I'm your host, Erica Zeal. Having been in the fitness and wellness space for over 15 years, a published author and creator of many programs and courses, I'm here to open up conversation around movement, mindset, and wellness and get you thinking outside the box. When we approach life with an open mind and a willingness to see what we can learn about life around us and our own body, you can truly amaze yourself. We don't know what we don't know, and the best way to find out is to embrace where you are today and be open to exploring possibilities. And in today's episode, I am so excited to welcome back our prenatal coach, Annie Tinker. So we are going to open up conversation today all about preparing for pregnancy, birth, postpartum recovery. So I know for a lot of you listening, you're going to be like, Erica, I have no interest in pregnancy, but there's a lot of you that are. You're planning to have another baby, or you're planning to become pregnant. And I know for every one of you listening right now, you know someone who is either pregnant, newly postpartum, or planning to have a baby in the near future. Like, text this link to them, because this information that Annie and I are going to share today could literally transform their pregnancy, birth, or postpartum recovery experience. And Annie and I are so passionate, and we see it time and time again, the power that knowledge has, especially for pregnancy, birth, and recovery. There's a lot of myths out there and all of that. So I'm really, really excited that we're going to tackle this, how connect the dots on everything from pre-pregnancy all the way through early postpartum. And for those of you that are tuning in to listen today, Annie and I, and Coach Jen also, we are going to be doing a pregnancy 5-day challenge. We are calling it Embrace Your Bump. And it starts February 12th, but you can go ahead and sign up and get registered. We'll be sending out some little goodies ahead of time, and just be sharing all sorts of amazing knowledge and information that we just want all women in this phase of life to have, because, you know, we all have personal connections with how it has positively affected our lives, not to mention the thousands of women that have also been touched by what I'm teaching, Annie's teaching, and Jen is teaching. So before we even get started, I just want to let all of you know, if you have any questions that come up as you're listening to today's episode, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. You can reach both of us on Instagram at Knocked Up Fitness, or you can reach me at Erica Zeal as well. And anything we talk about today, we will put all those links in the show notes for all of you so you can find more information. I'm so excited. Welcome, Coach Annie, back to the Core Connections podcast.
And today we're going to dive deep into conversation in preparing your body for pregnancy, birth, and recovery postpartum, because so many times I feel like each one of those kind of gets segmented out on their own. And I really want everyone listening to understand how they are so intertwined. So Annie, let's start with, actually preparing your body for pregnancy. And I know this is impossible for everyone, right? But it's starting before you become pregnant. So Annie, what are some of your top tips as the prenatal coach and as a birth doula that you love to share with women even before she gets pregnant?
I feel like this is just so important, because what a lot of our mamas don't know is that nutritionally, your placenta is created from nutrients that you have ingested up to 6 months prior to conception. So when we're thinking about, okay, I might be ready for a baby, I might be ready to try, or I'm, IVF, or however you're going to go about this, really kind of set your sights for a year to 6 months prior and really start putting those wheels in motion. So first, really get into your nutrition. Find, what you like, what works for your body, any sensitivities you may have, kind of take that time to hone in on that, get your, whole food, high healthy fat diet going. And then weed out toxins, whether it's, household chemicals or your makeup or whatever. Just really start living super, super clean a year to 6 months out. And then as far as the physicality of it all, start to bring attention to the muscles that are going to be involved in carrying this baby and helping you stay stable and functional all through pregnancy, recovery, and that postpartum period. So really start visualization, get that mind-body connection working, start to do some pelvic floor connection work, some releases, and just start getting that into your routine as key parts of your fitness, routine. Those small pelvic floor movements, and just get to know those muscles. And then my third tip is to start interviewing and going around and touring these different care providers. Make sure that you are totally 100% comfortable with the team that's going to be helping you through that, 9-10 months of pregnancy. And then those people you're going to be seeing postpartum when you go in and, maybe get checked for diastasis or if you tear or whatever. Make sure that you're comfortable with all facets of the process, the preconception, pregnancy, and postpartum with that care team. So kind of to break it down, those 3 tips would be really hone in on that nutrition and those supplements, and start living super clean, start to work on those muscles, those muscle releases, get that mind-body connection going, and then take your time interviewing and meeting different care providers and, together with your partner or whoever's going to be laboring with you, figure out who fits you guys best.
Yeah, I think that's such great advice. And I want to add in with the mind-body connection is really working on your stress. This has been something that it comes up in almost every episode, it seems like, is like, okay, stress really can be the root of so many symptoms and things that as women we deal with. And so in pregnancy, it's even more important because baby feels stress. So I don't want you to stress yourself out being like, oh my gosh, I have to decrease my stress, right? But what you can do, and again, this really goes for any time, but the sooner you can start, the better at getting a handle on that lifestyle. And so if there's things that you're recognizing like, oh, this is a big stressor in my life, well, what can I do? Is it actually that thing in your life, or is it how you're responding to it? That, as we call it, like perceived stress, right? There's so many techniques out there, right? There's meditation, there's breath work, there's, actually even getting in your workout can be a good stress release for you, but you have to also make sure that your workout is not a stress for you, because if you're working out too hard, that actually could be a stressor for your body. I did an episode a while back about working out smarter, not harder. That would be a really, really good episode to listen to, really anytime, but especially if you're planning to become pregnant, so that you can really start off just with so much more knowledge. Knowledge is power. And I think that that's really where Annie and I want to get across with everyone today. So let's go ahead and move into, okay, so we know that, pre-pregnancy, 6 to 12 months before would be ideal, right? But let's be honest, like not most women don't get a chance to get that opportunity to really prepare for a pregnancy. But the thing is, it's never too late to work on really taking care of your body and learning about your body. So once you are pregnant, or for those of you that are currently pregnant and maybe you're like, Erica, I am due in like 2 weeks. Is there anything I can do now? And first answer is yes, there's always things to learn and do. And I think the biggest thing that Annie and I have seen over the years, and that I'm going to really stress, is that even if you don't have a lot of time left in your pregnancy, like everything that Annie and I said for pre-pregnancy applies for pregnancy. Absolutely. But during pregnancy, we're doing a lot of things to help actually prepare your body for birth and also the postpartum recovery, right? Because we tend to segment those as separate. But what we've found, even in the movement side, and we work with this in our Nocta Fitness prenatal membership, and because you get the opportunity of hopping on, calls with Coach Annie, it's amazing because she, as a birth doula herself, she can help coach you on some of these things so you can feel more confident going into labor, to know what to prepare for or how to prepare your body, and mentally how to prepare, and understand that you have options. Pregnancy is the best time to learn about your core and how to strengthen your core, and learn so much about your body and reconnect with your body in a way that you've never been able to. And it's just such a magical time in life when, because you have that baby inside your belly, you have so much that you can feel inside. So it's such a magical time where you can feel so much more and learn so much more about your pelvic floor and those deep core muscles. And because the way that I cue you and teach you through the workouts, you're really learning how to tap into the fascia of our body. And it's really the fascia that's really giving you the support, especially through your abdominal wall. So when we're talking about if there's a previous, C-section scar or any other scarring, that maybe it's the tissue around it that's actually weak, because that scar is so, like, the tissue can be all like muddled up and restricted, but we can actually work to change at that cellular level that scar tissue so that it becomes stronger all across, through your abdomen and from your pelvis and all the way up. Not to mention, by doing that, we can work to prevent and minimize pelvic floor dysfunction, such as, peeing your pants, pelvic organ prolapsing, which is a real thing. And I feel like we end up with so many women on the side of they end up having pelvic floor dysfunction, and then they find and come across what we're teaching. And they're just always like, where was this when I was pregnant with my first baby? Because sometimes it's that, you don't know what you don't know, which is why I love having this conversation, because even if you're like, yeah, I don't have any of those issues, that's amazing. You are in the perfect place to learn about them, so you hopefully never have to experience them, right? It sucks when we're like, we have to get to a place where we have to experience something to then fix our body. Prevention is amazing. It's so much easier. It's so much, we can get those results so much quicker.
Right, exactly. You're bringing up so many good points. So to just touch on a couple of those, one, for that mama who is, joining our membership or coming to the realization that she might need a little bit of prep work, 2 months, 2 weeks before she gives birth, there is still plenty that you can do. Kind of to narrow it down, really focus on that nutrition, because hormonally, when you get that hormone shift postpartum and that milk starts to come in, you are going to just get a wave, right, of hormones that you can't really prepare for, because it's different for every pregnancy. But if your body has the nutrients that it needs, that shift can happen, and you can be able, it can come a little softer, if that makes sense, because the rest of your body is functioning really well. And then you can really focus in on those releases. And the releases that we teach in particular are so good all the way leading up to labor, and then in labor. Some of those birth ball movements that we teach, I have taken into the labor and delivery room so many times with my clients to help open the inlet, depending on the knee positioning, get that baby down, get mom into a position that she feels really comfortable, but her body is still able to do what it knows to do. And her body is still able to really release as those contractions come. So focus in on those releases, like we've been saying, throughout your whole pregnancy, but especially for those mamas who are, a couple weeks out. And then the prevention side of things, if you're coming in second, third pregnancy and you weren't able to do much, or you just didn't have access to this information, like you said, Erica, it's never too late. And I was talking to a couple moms yesterday on some of our new member calls, and they were kind of asking, what if I missed or whatever. You have to think about these movements and these smaller muscles that, aren't the glutes, aren't the muscles that are always talked about and always focused in on. You have to really think about the long game here, because it takes a lot of focus. It takes time. You have to really focus in on lighting up each muscle. And that is to prevent, like you said, the issues that come along when we're in our late 40s, 50s, 60s, and being able to be active with our children and grandchildren, is so important when we're at our childbearing years, but even more important, in my opinion, when we're much older. We can avoid so many of these issues by putting in this work now.
I'm going to add into that. Oh, it can start way before even in their 40s, because, and I probably see this more on the core rehab side, right? Because I do the coaching over there, is that it can happen in your 20s, can happen in your 30s. It doesn't always wait until you are older. For, I would say maybe a majority, yes. But you know what? I think it started so much earlier. I just think we're just now starting to have, I mean, I've been having these conversations for over a decade with my clients, but as a society, I think we're just starting to get a little bit more information out there where women are talking about pelvic floor and, you know, their uterus or bladder falling out of their vagina. But there were signs before. And one of the biggest signs, ladies, is peeing your pants. That is the first, there's, I'm sure others, but that is like the first true symptom that I feel like women start to experience, and it gets laughed off. It does. And I say this like so with passion behind it, because I end up working with the women when things have gotten so bad that they're like, Erica, I've tried everything. I'm hopeless. My doctor tells me all I have left is surgery. And I can tell you, when surgery is not the answer, surgery doesn't strengthen anything in your body, but this is a conversation that OBs should be having with their patients, and they're not. We're still having the conversation around Kegels. Do your Kegels. Well, what is a Kegel, ladies? And everyone's still teaching them incorrectly. I'm like, get on my rant on this for just a minute, because again, I end up working with the women, and again, it's never too late, but the sooner you can start. And I know for many of you, you're probably like, you know, you're listening to this, you're pregnant, you're planning to become pregnant, and you're just like, I don't have any of these. And some of you probably do. I just cannot stress it enough. Like, you have to learn about this. You have to learn how to properly strengthen your deep core, your pelvic floor. And it's not about doing Kegels, ladies. Most women do them incorrectly. Like, you've been taught to stop the flow of urine, right? When you go pee. That is awful, awful, awful. You could just start a whole scent of UTIs. And nobody wants that, because then
Totally.
it's antibiotic after antibiotic. And
Yes. Yes. And I heard a doctor the other day say, and this was, you know, someone who has a big following, say, okay, you know, Kegels are just as simple as stopping your urine stream while you're going to the bathroom, or holding your pelvic floor muscles or your vaginal muscles so tight as you can for 5 seconds, then releasing it and repeating that 20 to 15 times. Like, that is going to create the shortest, weakest muscle that will not, the functionality of that will not last, you know, more than a couple weeks, number one. And going back to the urine stream thing, you're exactly right. The UTIs, and you're holding a child, your baby is right there, you know, within inches of that urine stream that you're holding in, and that bacteria can get trapped. That is a really dangerous, very outdated way of teaching that. So to all of our moms, you know, listening, learn the correct way to Kegel.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it's like you mentioned, like, holding your pelvic floor really tightly is really badly. Like, there's this really badly, really bad. Because what we end up seeing is so many women that have actually too tight of a pelvic floor. And that's contributing to, you know, the incontinence, the peeing of your pants, and the pelvic organ prolapsing. And there's different degrees of prolapsing. So the sooner you can recognize, like, oh yeah, I do have incontinence. Okay, well, we need to do something about that, right? Even if it's just when you laugh or cough or sneeze, or you're like, yep, can't jump on the trampoline. You're like 28 years old and you're like, had 3 kids, can't jump on the trampoline anymore. That's a red flag, ladies. Like, it really is. And your mom might tell you, oh, that's normal, or a friend or a mom, like, because we hear those stories all the time. It might be, quote, normal in society, but it's not normal for your body. Your body is capable of so much more. And that's why, like, Annie and I get so passionate about this, because it's not just about, you know, working out. That's great. And I encourage that so wholeheartedly, right? But it's deeper than that. It's so much more, because we are teaching you fundamentals of how to properly strengthen your pelvic floor, which also includes releasing and relaxing through your pelvic floor, because so many of you are too tight, especially, like, and it doesn't mean you know, have to just fit this, but for those of you that have in the past or currently still lift a lot of weights, heavy weight training, things like that, I find across the board, like, almost all those women are too tight in their pelvic floor. And so there's just this knowledge that we need to talk about. And this is why, so when we're talking about pregnancy, right, like, what you do during pregnancy can, you know, really dramatically affect how your birth goes. And that's where, even for those of you that have C-sections, and I really wanted to make sure we talked about this today, because I always get questions from women that, have had a C-section, or they know they're going to have C-sections. And so they just like think, oh, well, I don't need to do the deep core stuff because I'm not going to have any pelvic floor issues because I'm not going to birth a baby out of my vagina. Well, I hate to break it to you, but you've been carrying around a baby for 9-ish months, and that weight of that baby is putting pressure on your pelvic floor. And if you're still doing Kegels and really don't know how to activate your pelvic floor, there's pelvic floor dysfunction going on. It may be the start of it, but we find it over and over again. The thing that we see with women that, they do all the same things during pregnancy, even if they know they're going to have a C-section, or for whatever reason they end up needing a C-section, their doctor who does that surgery, like, always asks them, what were you doing during pregnancy? Because their tissue is so much different. They're like, it's so easy to like cut with their scalpel. Like, it's just so nice. And the most important piece here is it heals so much more effectively and quickly. We find that, I've heard that story so many times from so many women. So we can't discount like, oh, well, I'm going to have a C-section, I don't need to do any of that stuff. Like, no. You are setting yourself up for an amazing, better surgery if you have to have one. And then the postpartum recovery. So before we get into postpartum recovery, because this is all connected, what you do during pregnancy can dramatically affect birth, which also affects postpartum. So Annie, let's talk about birth in particular, right? What are some of those things during pregnancy, and how are they related to birth outcomes? And again, I will say this, like, there is no guarantee, right? But if we don't ever do any prep work and learn anything, then we're just going at it kind of blindly, right?
Yes, exactly. So the first thing that really comes to mind is for those VBAC mamas who want to try for vaginal after cesarean. Before you've conceived, in that kind of preconception period, if you are able to, carve that out for yourself, this gentle stomach massage that Erica teaches, it's in the membership. I believe it's on the YouTube as well. Gentle stomach massage to begin breaking up that scar tissue from your previous surgery and allow that tissue to start regenerating and those cells to start regenerating, that blood flow to return to that area so that the stomach and the tissues can grow along with baby, and you're able to avoid, in some cases, a repeat cesarean with all of this work that you've done. But even if you are going to have another cesarean, your body can stretch along with baby's growth spurts so that you can avoid that belly tightness and that mid back and low back pulling and strain that you get when you wake up one morning and baby's going through a growth spurt and your tissue isn't keeping up with baby's growth because you're not releasing it. You haven't, done the stomach massage to break up that scar tissue, etc. So that's one that really lit up for me.
And I'm going to just add one more with that is
Yeah.
like the pelvic tilts and hip rolls, which I know we have that one. We'll put these links in the show notes because there's that power of learning how to properly connect through the deep core as well as all the release stuff that you talk about.
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right. Yeah, I'm big on releases because in the doula world, it comes up again. I was one of those moms who lifted a lot of weights. I was very into weight training. I had, done CrossFit here and there, but, lots of box jumps and overhead press, etc. And I did put the work in, but I did not focus on my releases because I thought, I'm so strong in my pelvic floor connections. I've got this. And when I got into my 30-hour labor with my little boy, I wanted to go vaginal. I wanted to go no epidural. And I look back at the photos and I was at the time wondering, why is this progressing so slowly? Every labor is different. There's no way to determine, how the actual labor is going to go. But at the time I was thinking, I'm doing everything I should. But looking back at photos, I was resisting so much. My entire body is tensed up. I'm clenching my teeth and truly believe if I had focused just as much on the strengthening as I had the releases, it would have been totally different because my body would have had it into muscle memory to inhale, exhale, release through that pelvic floor like we teach in the push prep, allow that contraction to happen, happen and pass and, do what it's supposed to do instead of fighting it. So that's my personal experience why, I'm so big on releases, and why I think that for our pregnant mamas, even adding a release before you're strengthening a workout for a warm up, or if you're having one of those first trimester, third trimester days where you're just not feeling it, if you can muster just to do one of the belly release exercises or that active release flow, that is a really good blend of strengthen and release. Get something in, check off that box just one day at a time, because the benefits will really, really show in the labor and delivery room.
Yeah, that's where it's like, honestly, it's like, even if you don't, that first trimester of like not feeling well, but if you can even just do a tiny little bit. And the other big piece to connect a dot with all of this is you're moving throughout your day regardless, right? Unless you are truly put on bed rest, you're standing, you're sitting, you might be, wrangling a toddler or, whatever it might be. So learning how to carry your body is huge, right? And that's where like it's Annie and I see all the time, like we want you to learn these pieces to apply them also to your life, because versus just always setting aside that time to work out. That's great. But we know how life goes. I have 3 kids. Annie's got a toddler running around her house, right? So sometimes, thinking of like, oh my gosh, I don't have an hour. You definitely don't have to spend an hour. We find if on a regular basis, a couple times a week even, you can work on specifically like just doing this deep core, strengthening, releasing, and then learning how to carry your body throughout pregnancy. You are right there preparing your body for the rest of your pregnancy, helping set your body up for, hopefully an easier birth. And then the recovery, right? As we go into motherhood, or continuing if this is, a second or third or fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh baby for you, whatever it is. And I wanted to add one thing, because with my first, it was just like Annie, right? I had been studying pregnancy and exercise since I was in college. I was just always fascinated by it. So with my first baby, when she was born, I actually had an unnecessary episiotomy when I was that total person that I knew used to grip in my deep core muscles. And so every contraction would instead of allowing my body to release and relax, because I didn't know this information and everything I had learned at that point, my body would tense. So I had to have epidural, which then I dilated to 10 really quick from that. But the doctor did not allow my body time to push the baby out. And he was like old school doctor. And he just did that episiotomy. And let me tell you, I feel like they are not done anymore near as much as they used to be. But that is one other thing to add to your list, to have a conversation with your OBGYN. Like, what is their thoughts process on doing episiotomies? Hopefully they are very, very, very rare for that doctor, and only needed in an absolute emergent situation. Because that scar tissue, ladies, lasted for 9 years. It's pretty gnarly. It was really, really gnarly. So I always say that's why part of all this work we're doing is we want you all to experience the best birth that you can, and also preparing your body. So if you need to quickly push baby out, you're going to be more prepared to do that, because you've been working on strengthening those deep core muscles. You've been learning to release and relax. And yes, your uterus is technically the strongest muscle in the body. It's those contractions. They're there to push baby out. But if you could push baby out in less than an hour versus spending 3 hours, that would be amazing, because it's less stress on you and it's way less stress on baby. And if in an emergent situation, which was my second, who was a nuchal cord, he had the cord wrapped around his neck. So every contraction, his heart rate would plummet, because it'd be suffocating him. And I remember okay, this is my second birth. And the doctor was like, okay, Erica, you have to push as hard as you can. I was like, wait, I'm just getting started, right? And I pushed him out in 3 pushes, and it was an emergent one. Otherwise, they would have rushed. If I didn't get him out that quickly, they would have rushed me back for an emergency C-section, which at the end of the day is fine, right? Because ultimately, mom and baby would be healthy. But I was able to prevent that because I had trained my muscles to connect while also releasing through the pelvis. And that was actually the light bulb moment when I really started teaching even more of this, because I recognized holy smokes, there's so much power in what we can train the body to do. It's just absolutely amazing. And a big part of it is just education.
Absolutely. And I know we have to get off here in a minute, but something else I talked about with my new members the other night was think about labor and delivery as a marathon. And that uterus is the main muscle needed in that marathon. Would you train for a marathon and leave your legs out of it? You know what I mean? Would you buy all the gear and get the tennis shoes and do everything, but you wouldn't train your legs? We have got to shift our mindset to this is the biggest thing your body is ever going to go through in your entire life. You're literally creating new life, pushing it through a hole that grows within a matter of hours. It's insane if you really think about it. So that uterus is the muscle that's doing all of this work, those abdominals, that pelvic floor. We have got to train those muscles, prepare those muscles just like we would any other, athletic event that we would ever do, marathon or whatever. Because the whole goal, just like you're saying, is to come out of this with a healthy mom, a healthy baby, feeling good and ready to transition into this life of motherhood. And if you are bruised and beaten up at the end of your labor and delivery, and those muscles are just, have been worked to failure and recovery is really hard, then it's going to make everything in that postpartum journey so much harder. The sleep deprivation and the mood swings and everything. If you're in pain and you just feel bad from the inside out, everything else is going to be exponentially more difficult.
Yeah, there is such a correlation between, pregnancy, we have our birth. And the thing is, and I know Annie is so amazing at coaching our mamas through this, is like, having those alternate plans, right? So maybe things don't go exactly like you want them, but let's have like a process of like, okay, what are our next things? Because things happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, if you can learn more and you can prepare your body more, you are setting yourself up for things to go more in the direction that you want them to go. And, it's day and night. It can be day and night for, women that have really learned how to connect correctly, how to release. We are even getting first-time moms who have no tearing, and all they've done is the work that we're teaching them. We've had, first-time moms that have very minimal tearing. And minimal tearing is still amazing because what we want to be minimizing is severe tearing, the episiotomies, the long, just exhaustive, pushing. And when we say labor, I should actually clarify that. Like what Annie and I really are teaching, because there's where does labor start for one versus another? That's a harder thing to kind of calculate. So what Annie and I really are coaching you on is the pushing phase. Once you're like, okay, body is dilated to 10 and it's time to push the baby out. Like that's where what we teach is absolutely incredible. And so when you have an experience where you have minimal to even no tearing, you then postpartum, you feel so much better. And, it's one of those things, if you never experience a rough labor, then that's awesome. You'll never really know, right? But for someone like myself who went all the way from having an unnecessary episiotomy that was awful, 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 the recovery from that was worse than labor itself. It really, really was. It was awful. And then
I cannot imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. When I had my third, and, I was so much more knowledgeable and prepared by then, and I had zero tearing with her. And I was like, yeah, well, it's, a little uncomfortable down there because there's swelling and all that, but I didn't actually have an incision or any tearing. And I was like, wow, this is what birth is supposed to feel like. Like it was a total, just day and night experience from my first to my third. And I was like, this is what I want for women. This is truly what I hope every woman gets a chance to experience, because my recovery with her was very, very, very different than my first one. And it was just, I just can't stress it enough. So anyway, there is such that correlation, right? And and we want you all, it's hard enough having a newborn and not sleeping. And then if your body is in more pain, and again, there's no guarantee, but Annie and I love this. And this is what we know. We worked with thousands of women to date, and both of us have worked with women in person as well. And it's just amazing what the body is capable of.
Absolutely. And again, just switching that mindset to really focus on you. You are the vessel. You are creating this life. You and this baby are one and the same. So if you can't if you're one of those mamas who's just so selfless and you have a really hard time focusing on yourself, think about it in terms of this is good for your baby as well. Again, there's no guarantee, but decreased birth trauma and all of these things, when you are just so prepared and you ask every single question that comes into your mind, you take the time, find that care team and all of that stuff. Birth happens, things happen, but if you can be mentally prepared, the recovery can be much better, whatever life throws at you.
Absolutely. Well said. Well, thank you so much, Annie, for hopping on here to have this conversation. Thank you all for listening. If you have another girlfriend or friend who is pregnant or preparing to have a baby, text her the link to this episode so that she can learn a little bit more as well. And if any of you ladies have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. You can either reach out on Instagram to my account at Erica Zeal or over on our account at Knocked Up Fitness.
The material contained within is provided for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. You should seek medical care for any specific health issues and consult your physician before beginning a new regimen or purchasing any product.